Welcome again to another episode of Easy IVF. Today we'll be talking about 3 methods of sex selection. In our last video we talked about the reasons why people opt for sex selection, and today our topic would just focus on how you actually do sex selection. To understand the topic, I would like to quickly review a very simple pathway to sex determination. As we know, 23 pairs of chromosomes are needed for the formation of a healthy child. There are 2 critical chromosomes responsible for sex determination, the X and the Y chromosomes. The X is the default chromosome, which is female-like, whereas the Y contains the sex-determining region, normally referred to as the SRY gene, or as I would call it, a sorry gene. A male typically have an X and Y chromosome, whereas female carries X and an X chromosome. Chromosomal sex is determined at the time of fertilization. A chromosome from the sperm cell, which could be X or Y, fuses with the X chromosome in the X cell. If the X from the man's chromosome fuses with the woman's X, a female child is conceived. And if the Y from the man's chromosomes fuses with the X from the woman, a male child is conceived. When you do ultrasound, it is difficult to actually tell the sex of the child till at least after 6 to 8 weeks of fertilization. Now that you have an idea of the basis of sex selection, let's just right on to the methods of sex selection. 1. Sperm sorting. This is done pre-fertilization using a flow cytometer, which can provide a semen sample enriched with sperm that bears the desired sex chromosome. The process of cell sorting allows the separation of the X and the separation of the Y. So basically what happens is that the semen is mixed with a dye, and the spermatozoa is allowed to pass through a flow cytometer, and they are kind of like sorted in a single file. So the X would go to one side and the Y would be sorted to one side. And at the end of the procedure, you would have 2 different tubes containing an X chromosome and the other tube containing a Y chromosome. So you can do the math. If you basically want a male child, knowing that X is constant in female, you would inseminate the lady with a Y bearing sperm. And if you want a female child, knowing that X is constant, you would inseminate with an X bearing sperm. Right? So there are so many associated risks with DNA damages using this process. Also, the accuracy of this process is not 100%. So basically, an X bearing sperm can seep into the Y bearing region, right? So basically you can have one sperm contaminated, and that might be the determining factor in your pregnancy. This procedure, however, is not used in the US, and it is not used in Canada as well. The second process of sex selection is ultrasound. So this is the most extreme form of sex selection that occurs after conception in the form of elective termination of pregnancy or selective abortion. So in certain parts of the world, such procedures are commonly performed due to so many reasons, as discussed in our previous videos. For example, sex and gender preference, cultural beliefs, and people trying to save their marriages by having a particular sex of a child. The final method of sex selection is pre-implantation genetic screening or pre-implantation genetic testing, PGS or PGT. So PGS is one of the ethically preferable choice of sex selection because it avoids the prenatal determination and termination of pregnancy. So basically with PGS, an embryo is created in vitro and is biopsied on day 5 or day 6 using a laser. So you have to go through IVF to be able to get your embryo and to be able to culture your embryo to day 6 and then biopsying your embryo. So the biopsy tissue is genetically analyzed using probes to determine like the chromosomal makeup of the embryo. Then the desired embryo with the preferred gender is transferred back into the female's womb with the hope of implantation, pregnancy, and a live birth. So some of the drawbacks of this procedure, however, includes the cost. embryo degeneration due to the biopsy or poor survival rates during thawing, and most importantly, the cost that is associated with doing IVF. It's kind of expensive, so if you can't afford it, going through all of this might be can be very challenging. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to subscribe and share this video with a friend. Thanks so much for watching, and cherish life.